It's 2031. Capital controls are active. Your savings? Frozen. Your children's college fund? Locked behind government approval. Your parents' retirement? Evaporating in real time. Banks are limiting withdrawals to $300 per week. The grocery store only accepts government-approved digital currency. You wait in line for 3 hours just to access your money. You did everything right. Worked hard. Saved diligently. Played by the rules. But the rules changed. And nobody warned you. Now, here's the thing that should terrify you. This isn't science fiction. Every single element I just described has already happened. Argentina, Venezuela, Cyprus, Lebanon, Greece, real countries, real people, real families who woke up one morning and realized everything had changed. Today, we're going to examine the 6 mechanisms currently grinding toward this exact scenario in the world's largest economy. But I'm not going to leave you there, because unlike most videos on this topic that end with vague advice like buy gold, I'm going to show you an actual lifeboat strategy. With specific numbers, specific timelines, specific first steps you can take this week. Quick note before we dive in. Everything I share today is for educational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is personalized investment advice. Always do your own research, because your children will inherit either opportunity or debt based on what you understand and what you do in the next few years. Let's start with the number that should keep you up at night. $315 trillion. That's the current global debt. Not millions, not billions, trillion, with a T. If you counted $1 per second, it would take you over 10 million years to count to $315 trillion. The pyramids would have been built and crumbled to dust 500 times before you finished. But numbers this big don't feel real. So let me introduce you to Dave. Dave is 52 years old. He's worked for 30 years. Done everything society told him to do. He's got $50,000 in savings. A house with equity. A 401k that looks healthy on paper. Dave thinks he's prepared for retirement. Dave thinks the system works. Dave is wrong. Here's what Dave doesn't understand. That $315 trillion? It's not sitting in a vault somewhere. It's not theoretical. It's a claim on future productivity. Your productivity. Your children's productivity. Your grandchildren's productivity. And it's growing. The United States alone adds $1 trillion in new debt approximately every 100 days. Let me say that again. $1 trillion. Every 100 days. Here's the number that should really concern you. For the first time in American history, the interest payments on the national debt now exceed the entire defense budget. We're not paying down the debt. We're not even keeping up with it. We're borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money we already borrowed. This is what happens to individuals right before bankruptcy. Dave's $50,000 in savings, it's being eroded every single day, not by theft, not by bad investments, by the very nature of the system itself, because the debt can never be repaid. It was never designed to be repaid. The only way out is to inflate it away, to make those dollars worth less so the debt becomes more manageable. And when you inflate the currency, Dave's $50,000 becomes $35,000 in purchasing power, then $25,000, then $15,000, all while the number in his bank account stays the same. This isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature, and Dave has no idea it's happening. But how did we get here? How did the entire global economy become dependent on debt that can never be repaid? The answer lies in a decision made over 50 years ago, a decision that changed everything. August 15th, 1971, a date that should be taught in every economics class. A date that changed the financial future of every person alive today. On that day, President Richard Nixon went on national television and spoke these words: "I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporarily. That was 53 years ago. Here's what Nixon did. Before 1971, the US dollar was backed by gold. You could literally walk into a bank with $35 and walk out with an ounce of gold. The dollar was a receipt for something real. After 1971, the dollar became backed by a promise from the government that this piece of paper has value. Now, I know what you're thinking. That was over 50 years ago. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Let me show you what happened after Nixon's temporary suspension. In 1970, the average house cost 2.3 times the average annual salary. Today, that same house costs 8 times the average salary. In 1970, a new car cost about 35% of the average annual income. Today, it's over 60%. In 1970, a year of college tuition cost about 4% of median household income. Today, it's over 25%. Your parents bought a house on one income. You need 2 incomes and still struggle. Your kids might need 3 incomes and a side hustle. This isn't because you're lazy. This isn't because you're not working hard enough. It's because the measuring stick changed. When Nixon disconnected the dollar from gold, he gave the government the ability to create unlimited amounts of money out of thin air. And they did. Since 1971, the US money supply has increased by over 4,000%. Let me translate that. For every dollar that existed in 1971, there are now $40 chasing the same goods. This is why your dollar buys less every year. This is why your raises never feel like enough. This is why you're working harder than your parents but falling behind. The French had a name for this. They called it the exorbitant privilege, the ability to print the world's reserve currency without consequence. Except there are consequences. They just don't fall on the people making the decisions. They fall on you. They fall on Dave. They fall on your children. This is why your children will start the race behind the starting line, unless you understand what happened. But who benefits? Who actually gains when money is created from nothing? That brings us to the most insidious mechanism of all. In the 18th century, an Irish-French economist named Richard Cantillon discovered something that governments don't want you to understand. He noticed that when new money enters an economy, it doesn't affect everyone equally. The people who receive the new money first get to spend it before prices rise. The people who receive it last are stuck paying higher prices with the same old money. This is called the Cantillon Effect, and it explains everything that feels unfair about the modern economy. Here's how it works in practice. The Federal Reserve creates $4 trillion out of thin air. Where does that money go first? To banks, to large corporations, to hedge funds, to private equity. What do they do with it? They buy assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, businesses. This surge of new money pushes asset prices up before the general economy even knows the money exists. By the time that money trickles down to regular workers through wages, if it ever does, prices have already risen to absorb it. Let me give you a concrete example. During COVID, the Federal Reserve injected approximately $5 trillion into the financial system. Where did it go? The stock market hit all-time highs, while 20 million Americans lost their jobs. Housing prices soared 40%, while people couldn't pay rent. Billionaire wealth increased by $2.1 trillion in a single year. Meanwhile, you got a $1,200 stimulus check. This is not a coincidence. This is not an accident. This is the system working exactly as designed. The new money enters at the top. It inflates asset prices. The wealthy, who own assets, get richer. The middle class, who earn wages, fall behind. Every single time. This is why the wealth gap keeps growing despite record economic growth. This is why productivity has increased 60% since 1979, while wages have barely moved. This is why you feel like you're running faster just to stay in place. Because you are. The game is rigged at the source. The money itself is a tool of wealth transfer, from those who don't understand it to those who do. But here's what keeps the people running this system up at night. Someone's finally fighting back. To understand why this system is now under threat, we need to go back to how it started. July 1944, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. World War II is ending. Europe is in ruins. The world's leaders gather to design a new global financial system. Here's the power dynamic in that room. Europe, bankrupt, cities bombed, gold reserves depleted. America, untouched, factories booming, holding 2/3 of the world's gold. The United States made an offer the world couldn't refuse. Gold is heavy, dangerous to ship. Let's use the dollar instead. We promise, every dollar is backed by gold. You can exchange it any time. As good as gold. The world agreed. The US dollar became the world reserve currency. This was the moment the cheat code was activated. For almost 30 years, it worked. But then the US started spending. Vietnam War, space race, Great Society programs. By 1971, France did the math. Wait, you're printing way more dollars than you have gold. We'd like our gold back, please. If every country did this, America would be bankrupt. So Nixon made his announcement. No more gold, deals off. In a normal world, the dollar should have collapsed. A broken promise. Paper backed by nothing. But here's the genius, or the trap. Everyone was already using dollars. Oil was priced in dollars. Global trade was conducted in dollars. If the dollar crashed, the world crashed. America didn't just have a currency. America had a hostage. John Connally, Nixon's Treasury Secretary, said it perfectly to European finance ministers. The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem. That's the most gangster economic quote in history. And it's been true for 50 years. Because of this arrangement, the US can do things no other country can. Brazil wants to buy oil, needs dollars, has to sell things to America to get them. America wants to buy oil, prints the money. When America prints trillions, we get the cheap goods. The rest of the world holds our devaluing paper. This is the exorbitant privilege. The ability to export our inflation to everyone else. And guess who pays for this privilege? Not the people who benefit. Your family does. But empires don't last forever. And right now, the biggest challenge to this system is forming. A challenge that could change everything. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and as of 2024, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia. These nations represent over 40% of the world's population, over 30% of global GDP. And they're building something that should terrify anyone paying attention. A parallel financial system. Without the dollar, here's what's already happening. 2023, China and Saudi Arabia completed their first oil transaction in yuan. Not dollars, yuan. This is the first crack in the petrodollar agreement that's held since 1974. 2024, BRICS nations announced development of a new payment system to bypass SWIFT, the US-controlled messaging system that processes global transactions. Central banks around the world are buying gold at the highest rate in 55 years. Why would they do that if they trusted the dollar? Here's the pattern that should concern you. Empires don't fall suddenly. They fall gradually, then suddenly. The British pound was the world reserve currency for over 100 years. Then, in the span of about 30 years, it wasn't. The transition wasn't smooth. It wasn't orderly. And the British people who didn't see it coming paid the price. Now look at what's happening. The US share of global reserves has dropped from 71% in 2000 to 59% today. Still dominant. But the trend is clear. And here's what makes this moment different from any other in history. In the past, there was no alternative to the dollar. The euro is backed by aging economies. The yen is stuck in permanent deflation. The yuan has capital controls. But what if it's not a single currency that replaces the dollar? What if it's a basket, a BRICS currency, backed by commodities, by gold? The infrastructure is being built right now. The relationships are forming. The deals are being made. Does this mean the dollar will collapse tomorrow? No. Does this mean the system that's existed for 80 years is under the greatest pressure in its history? Yes. The question isn't if this changes. The question is when. And what happens to people who aren't prepared when it does? Which brings us to what you actually need to know. Because knowing the problems isn't enough. You need a plan. So now, you understand the 6 mechanisms. The debt that can never be repaid. The money created from nothing. The Cantillon Effect, transferring wealth upward. The Bretton Woods system that was never sustainable. The BRICS threat forming right now. The historical pattern of reserve currencies falling. The question is, what do you actually do about it? Most videos on this topic end right here. They leave you scared, but not prepared. They say buy gold without telling you how much or when to start. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to give you specific numbers. Because protect yourself isn't a strategy. It's a vague suggestion. Step 1. Start small. Start now. Consider buying your first ounce of silver as an educational exercise. It costs about $30, less than a dinner out, less than a tank of gas. I'm not telling you this will make you rich. I'm telling you to do this for a different reason. When you hold physical money in your hand, something that can't be printed, can't be inflated, can't be frozen by a government, you'll understand something that most people never learn. The difference between real money and a digital promise. That understanding alone is worth the $30. Step 2. Build gradually. Over the next 12 months, consider building to 5 to 15% of your portfolio in physical assets. Why 5 to 15%? Because it's enough to matter if I'm right, but not so much that it destroys you if I'm wrong. This isn't about going all in on doom. This is about hedging. Insurance. A lifeboat. Gold. Silver. Maybe land if you can afford it. Assets that exist outside the digital system. Assets that can't be frozen, devalued, or deleted with a keystroke. Important caveat. Physical assets like gold and silver also carry risks. They can lose value, they don't generate income, and they have storage considerations. This is one approach, not a guarantee. Step 3. Geographic diversification. Some portion of your assets should be outside the system that can freeze them. Different accounts, different jurisdictions, different counterparty risks. Not because you're paranoid, because you're paying attention. The timeline question. Now, I know what you want to ask. When? I think we're looking at a 3 to 7 year window. Could be faster if there's a geopolitical shock. Could be slower if they manage to kick the can further. The math on debt servicing suggests sooner rather than later. Interest payments exceeding defense spending is a warning sign you don't ignore. But here's what I need you to understand. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Nobody knows the exact timeline. Anyone who tells you they do is lying. What I believe based on this analysis is this. The system is designed to transfer wealth from those who don't understand it to those who do. The 6 mechanisms I showed you aren't accidents. They aren't bugs. They're features. Remember Dave? The guy with $50,000 who thought he was prepared? If Dave had understood what you now understand, if he had put just 5 to 10% of his savings into physical assets 5 years ago, his purchasing power would be protected. But Dave didn't prepare. Dave trusted the system. Don't be Dave. A reset appears increasingly likely. Whether it's a slow grind over a decade or a sudden shock over a weekend, the math is the math. $315 trillion in debt doesn't get repaid. It gets inflated away, restructured, or defaulted on. Every option hurts the unprepared. But here's what keeps me up at night. And I hope it keeps you up too. It's not about your portfolio. It's not about your retirement account. It's about what comes after. Your children will inherit one of 2 things. Opportunity, if you positioned your family for what's coming. Or debt. The debt of a system that transferred wealth from your generation to theirs, before they could even vote. Your decision. Their future. The question isn't whether the system changes. It's whether you're positioned when it does. If you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, that's completely normal. Don't make rushed decisions. Take time to research. Talk to people you trust. And remember, small, thoughtful steps are better than either paralysis or panic moves. Now, I need to be clear about something. This video is education, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know your situation, your risk tolerance, or your goals. Before you make any financial decisions, do your own research, consult professionals, make decisions that are right for your family. What I've shared today is information that most people never encounter. What you do with it is up to you. If this opened your eyes, consider subscribing. We cover the hidden mechanics of money, economics, and history every week, because understanding how the system actually works isn't optional anymore. It's survival. See you in the next one.